Good evening, everyone. The DBER webinar series. Yesterday, we started with this webinar lockdown series. My name is Armando Florechiu. I'm one of the DBER advisors in Shanghai. And today, also my colleague Sebastian Restrepo is joining us. Thank you, everyone, for connecting tonight. I hope everyone's staying safe, positive, but not on your test, obviously. And yeah, hi, Seb. Thanks for joining as well. Do you want to say something to our audience tonight?
Yes, hi everybody. Glad to be here. I will be more glad if we were in different circumstances, but this is live and this is what we got. But we're here positively giving some information to people, and hopefully people can get some value from these webinars that we're doing all this week. And yeah, happy to help all the community.
So for those who don't know, the webinars that we had yesterday was about financial freedom, the road towards financial freedom. So if you're interested to find out how to calculate how much you may need in retirement, because it was a very dynamic webinar last night, you can also let us know either on comments and an email, or the recording is going to be available, so you can go back to that one. And tomorrow we have another one, same time, 7 p.m. with the GAM management team, which are going to talk about what's the impact of this lockdown to the Chinese market. And this may be interest because we have lots of clients asking us, when shall we buy Chinese stocks, or is this a good time? So today we're not going to touch into that. You should go tomorrow to that webinar, because they are the experts who know everything about what is the financial impact to that. So yeah, so tonight we are going to focus on what is this China money checklist that every expat living in China obviously should consider. It's going to be very broad. We're going to touch on different things, but it's also going to be very interactive. Before we actually move on, just a quick heads up on how to use Zoom to make it more dynamic. We also want it to be interactive. So you have the chat box where you can send your comments, your questions throughout the meeting or throughout this presentation. But one suggestion is, once you want to send a message on the chat, before you do that, click on the to option and put on everyone, so everyone can actually see that. And this makes it easier to create an environment of conversation. So without further ado, I'll pass to Seb so we can get started, because we're gonna first talk about, or also find out what's the feeling of the audience. So everyone should be watching or getting a poll on your screen right now. So yeah, Seb, you can explain about this poll and see what's going on with it.
So the idea behind this little poll that we want to know is basically what drove you into this webinar today. So that will give us an idea of what can we address during the webinar as well. And that will give us an idea when the questions come, like, okay, maybe you're more interested in repatriate my China savings. Okay, so we can address more answers to that. Or you're more interested in invest as an expat, or maybe all the above. So it's just to give us a little bit of idea of what drives you into this webinar, so we can also give some feedback to you later on and make more webinars like this. So to start, the pool basically says, what is biggest money concern now as an expat? And it gives you 4 options: repatriate my Chinese savings, invest as an expat, where to send my money, or other.
Yeah, also, if the answer is other, actually, I'm gonna share the results very soon. Almost everyone already participated, so thanks everyone for sharing your feeling. But yeah, if you think it's other, also feel free to put it in the comments, so we also know what is it that we didn't cover. I think we gave enough time, so we can end the poll now. And let's share the poll results so people can see that you're not alone. Very likely what you answer, many others as well did. So Seb, go through these answers so we understand a bit more of the audience, and then we can get started.
All right. So we were thinking most of it will be repatriate Chinese savings. Surprisingly, it's actually invest as an expat. The majority is a little bit more interested in that, which is actually makes a little bit of sense as well. The repatriate my Chinese savings makes sense as well, because we are suffering lockdowns, a little bit of uncertainty in the market. We don't really know what's going to happen. So it's a little bit of fear or the unknown. but we're going to address some of those issues. We're going to give some solutions in terms of what we can do and what you as an expert can do as well. And basically, Armando will go also through some parts in terms of the investment as an expat, and we'll try to cover those topics in the questions as well, if you have more questions about that.
Yeah, so yeah, very surprising. And we actually did the same webinar a week ago, and it was very balanced between invest as an expat and repatriation of money. So yeah, it's very pleasant to see that people also want to do something with their money. And yeah, being an expat has a extra layer. So entering into the topic, the idea of this money checklist is divided into three main areas. So one is daily life in China, stability while living in China, and obviously living in China at some point, which most expats, I wouldn't say 100% because I'm sure there may be some who may stay for the long run. But yeah, at some point, this China journey may end. So starting with the daily life, it's important to know that there are some items that we want to consider for our lifestyle here. Anywhere you live in China, it can be Shanghai, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, anywhere. So we start with the savings part. It's very important to have some savings, obviously, for emergencies. This was touched on the previous webinar from yesterday. If you want to learn more about how much you should have in savings. And here, there's always, well, it's always important to have some money here in China because that's where we live. And I'm putting a mark there because I'm going to go further into how much should be here based on your current situation. Obviously, everyone is in a different situation, so we need to consider that. Having a credit card is not a must, but I think it's something that could be useful for certain things. For example, buying tickets, if you want to go back home, for sure, most websites, they require a credit card or even go to hotels. So for this one, you can get, as an expat, you can get a credit card in China. And I know there's always the myth like, oh, it's impossible. You need to put 100,000 deposits or you need to have a lot of Guanxi. Yeah, most of the time that's true, but there's still some solutions in some cities and branches. So we can also guide you with that if needed, or also getting one back home. So that's why there's a little home logo. And moving to the next part, which is very important as well for pretty much every expat, is to have different types of insurance. And where you're gonna keep that one, at the end of the day, this is just a suggestion. You can do it as you please, but based on our experience, for medical insurance, it doesn't have to be just a Chinese one, but it makes sense, especially now that it's not that easy to be traveling. A medical insurance in China, if your company is not providing that for you, is a must for pretty much any person. We don't want to be that person who needs to go into a WeChat group and create a flyer to collect money because we had an accident. We've all seen those, and it's sad what happens, but it can be avoided by having a basic policy, and it's not that expensive. And disclaimer, we don't offer medical insurance, but we believe that is a very important thing to do. Critical illness, it could be important as well, depends on your personal situation. And this one, it doesn't have to be Chinese. That's why it's covered the three main locations where it could be. It could be a Chinese one, it could be an international one, or it could be also one in your home country. And life insurance obviously also applies for some people, not for everyone. It's not only for people who have kids, it's also if you have some financial dependence now, or you plan to have financial dependence, whether that's your siblings, your parents. And this in particular, we rarely suggest that it's in China. Why? Because if you are going to claim, well, actually not you, whoever your beneficiaries are, we're going to claim the money from that policy. If it's a Chinese policy, it will be paid here in China, and then they'll need to find a way to how to take that money out. Probably a life insurance policy will be a quite substantial amount of money, so you don't want to give more headache to your family if this were going to happen. So this one, we always suggest something outside. It could be a international plan, or it could be a home plan, depends on your needs. And last thing, obviously, we all use Alipay and WeChat for our living expenses, for our daily life. But yeah, it's important to make sure that everything is in place in terms of make sure that your passport is updated, that try to make sure that your name matches with that. I know it's complicated, especially Latinos, we have very long names, but as possible, try to get it sorted out just in case you are out of China and then you may need to transfer a couple of yuan. Hopefully it won't be too much, because otherwise this is not the best way to move money around, but make sure that things are in place. So this is my basic suggestions for daily life. And I don't know if you have any comments on this, Seb, or what do you see on your day-to-day meetings with clients and people you talk to?
I would say most people try to prioritize the savings part, but without realizing that they can actually do a little bit of everything. They can be covered on life, they can have the credit card, they can manage everything in different little bags. It's just a matter of planning things properly. Sitting down with one of us is a good way of getting some advice that will help you kind of navigate that, just not keeping money in the bank for keeping money, but also to have a goal in mind, basically. So to add to what Armando just said, I think for me, most of my clients, life insurance is a must, because I deal with more, well, the type of clients that I deal the most is couples with kids. And usually those kind of niche people need some life cover, just because if they, for example, the husband is the only one who works, then if he's gone, then, and hopefully that will not happen. But if that happens, at least his wife and his children or kids can have some financial security, so to speak. So life cover, I say, is one of the most important things that I mention to my clients, and then I'll move to the other side.
Yeah, and to go more deep into savings, because obviously we have to have some cash in hand. And yeah, we definitely need some cash in China. But my suggestion, or our suggestion, would be don't keep too much in here. So try to budget. So first of all, you need to know how much you spend on a monthly basis. If you don't know, that's step number one. But once you do know, I would say 3 to 6 months of your China life expenses. Yeah, that one you can keep in China, no problem. And anything above that, it should be either for investments or outside of China. And what could be something else that you may need to consider as well is also, if you have to pay for your own medical insurance here in China, then yeah, you also need to budget that money. Maybe here in China, it don't have to be, but if you already have it here, then it may be easier. Also school fees, if you have to pay that, or any other big expense that has to be paid here in China. That one stays in China. And here's a tip that you could use. Let's say you know that your school fees or your kids' school fees is paid every 6 months, and you already have this is where you can do some of the investments that are available from the with being go to a bank that you want, and you can actually.
Armando, I think we're losing you a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, I think your sound is a little bit weird. Just check the connection a little bit, please.
All right.
Apologize, people. As you know, working from home is not the ideal thing, but we do our best.
Yeah, yes.
There you go. Now you're fine.
Can everyone hear me now?
Yeah, perfect. Go for it.
Okay, good. All right. Apologies to that. Yes, I think maybe it was the Wi-Fi, maybe it was my earphones. So I'm getting back to where I was talking about, which was keeping some savings. So the little hack is go to any bank account and you can actually get a time deposit. So that means you can lock the money that you know you need to spend in maybe 6 months into, this is the name, it's called Tinti Tsun Quan. I think it's actually with K, sorry about that mistake. And yeah, then you will get some little interest in that, and every expat can actually access that. So yeah, that will be my tip of what you can actually do in a Chinese bank. But before we move to the next one, we would like to make another poll to see where is actually people keeping most of their savings, not investments, just cash, to also have a feeling. Is people, or are people actually keeping that money in China, or are you keeping it in your home country, or in an offshore jurisdiction, or a mix of every place? So we also can have a better understanding of what are expats doing nowadays to keep their cash.
So we'll give some seconds more to people to keep on giving their answers. I think that should be enough. It's already, most people already answered. Let's end the poll. So let's share the result. You can see that over 40% of people keep their savings in China, and that's very normal, very common, at least from what I see
makes sense.
on my job. Same for you, Seb?
Yeah, same. Makes completely sense. They have a little bit outside, but most of it should be here in China.
Yeah, so that's fine. It's normal. Again, our suggestion is try to don't keep more than what you need for 3 to 6 months of living expenses here in China. And anything else, try to find another location, either back home or a third jurisdiction. So that's our take on what's important for the daily life. So for the next one, Seb, you're gonna go through stability in China. So tell us a bit about.
All right, yeah, there you go. All right, so one of the main things that we as expats, and I mean we, because we as financial advisors also face the same challenges that you guys face on the daily life, or basically when you're living in China for long term, is basically how do we deal with what governments provide back home? Or how do we have at least some sense of what other works, for example, companies provide back home? For example, one of the most common things that we deal with is retirement accounts. Most of us here in China have a serious lack of retirement provisions for later retirement, basically. And this is not something that is it's everybody's kind of responsibility to do it, but it's very normal. So I want to be clear that most people in China, most expats in China, lack of retirement savings. And it's a little bit normal because the government in China doesn't really provide much information about that, and it's complex, it's bureaucratic, it's really hard. So one of the things that we do as financial advisors is that kind of help you navigate that system, not the Chinese system, but actually the offshore system, in terms of like how can you access some savings plans, so to speak, where you can have some money in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and so on. But not only that, you also have to have a target and a goal and see, okay, if I want to retire with a certain amount of money because I have this certain lifestyle, how much money do I really need to enjoy that? And most people, what they don't realize is retirement is expensive. It's extremely expensive, and people need to save a lot of money, and not only save but also invest as well to make that ends means when retirement comes. I don't know if, Armando, you have the same feeling. I'm pretty sure when you meet clients and you're talking about retirement and they have this figure in their head, and then you draw the numbers and you do the calculation, and it's like, whoa, I didn't even know it was going to be like this.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, this was covered yesterday in yesterday's webinar. So if any of the attendees are curious about what is the actual calculation, obviously you can talk to any of the DBR advisors. Also, you can watch yesterday's webinar. Today, we're not going to go into the calculation
correct,
because that's not the topic, but yeah, for sure, it's never the amount that you think.
Yeah, correct. The other thing that you should think about is stability. And if you have children, you have kids, education plans are important. If you're thinking about sending them for some X or Y university, or maybe they will not go for an university, who knows? But it's better to have the funds if they decide to go to it. So education plans is something that you should also plan for. In terms of wealth accounts, what we call the wealth account is more about, it has to do more with tax liability. And it basically means that we try to help our clients to mitigate their tax impact, whatever they live from or whatever they go back home. You don't want to face too much burden in terms of taxes. So we kind of set up some wealth accounts, and not only to mitigate that, but also to help them invest the money and basically grow money. On the will and the estate planning, that's more something that we don't really do directly, but we do have the contacts of people who might need to set up a will or estate planning or things like that. And we can set up that very easy because we have a very broad reach through the company, and we can get that very easily. And some of the things that most expats don't know is that we can actually get mortgages as expats. And this is massive for expats because most of people who live here, more expats who live here, tend to buy properties as an investment. And that's a very good point as a terms of investment and stability. However, some majority of people always want to buy cash, which I'm not against it, of course. I mean, if you have the cash and you can buy an apartment or whatever property, go for it. But if we can teach you how to actually leverage that money in terms of a mortgage and actually be more efficient with your money in terms that you don't have to put all your cash in one asset, then basically that will give you even more options in terms of investment, and that will give you even more flexibility what you can do with your money. So having a mortgage is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's actually something that can help you actually increase your investment, so to speak.
And as you can see, for these ones, we don't recommend anything in China. That doesn't mean there are not good investments in China, but we see that most of our expat clients are thinking that most of these long-term goals are not here. Very, very few people see themselves returning in China. If you actually want to return in China, then yeah, no problems of having maybe one pension plan as well here in China. But most of the expats are not in that scenario. And that's why we suggest it should be something out there. And doesn't need to be always offshore. It could be also sometimes something back in your home country if that goal is required. But ideally, you want to do a mix, having a stability, something in your home country, sometimes in a third jurisdiction if it's stronger. And yeah, it's just find ways to diversify and see what applies to you as well. So before we go to the next one, we have another poll.
Yeah, and what I like to add as well there is that a lot of expats have mixed couples. So I deal with mixed couples as well. They have Chinese partner or male or female and an expat, right? And that complicates things a little bit because maybe the Chinese partner wants to have some things here in China as well. And for example, Armando is married to a Chinese local, and he has to navigate the marriage negotiations as well. So what we usually recommend what I recommend to that kind of couples is diversify, always diversify. So if you want to have some assets here in China, that's okay, but let's not put all our money or all our investments, all our savings in just one place. So that's why I would also add that even if you're married to a local, it doesn't mean that you cannot have some investments outside of China as well.
Yeah, so with that in mind, let's launch the next poll, which is obviously about stability. So here, this is a multiple choice, so you can choose as many as you want. So this is more about what are the areas, based on what we discussed, that you feel that you should be improving. And yeah, just to also have a feeling of what's everyone doing and what are the areas to improve. I'll also tell you what happened yesterday. I think it was a mix of retirement as the top, followed by property investment. So let's find out what's going on with the audience from today. But yeah, it's very interesting to see already get more than half of the people submitting an answer. Thanks everyone for this. But yeah, very important. That obviously today's webinar is more of a guidance. This checklist applies for some people. Some of the things may not be applicable to you, but definitely it's important to be at least have the knowledge that I didn't know that I can get a retirement account as an expat, or I can even get a mortgage as an expat. Obviously, we're talking about mortgage outside of China, not a Chinese mortgage, and that's a different story. So let's end the poll and see what was the results. Let's share the results to everyone. And same like yesterday. Sorry, last week. Most people feel they should be improving their retirement provisions. I mean, that's pretty much everyone in the world, not just expats in China. I think that's a global problem. and also improving property investment. So yeah, that's very normal. Then followed by wealth accounts and education planning and inheritance in the last spot. But that's very, very common. So let's move to the next part, which is, I think, one of the reasons many decided to join tonight. Well, not the only one, because we're worried, so that also investing is very important to most attendees as well. But yeah, it's about leaving China. So for this one, I'm gonna cover on 3 items that I think are very important when you are planning your end of this journey in China. It's very important to have an international bank account because at some point you want to repatriate your savings, right? So we're talking about moving your money that you have here. You need an account somewhere else. You'll be surprised, but there's lots of people that I've met that the only bank account they have is in China. So what happens if you leave? Where are you going to send that money? You cannot just stay in China and then you go to a new country, open a bank account and transfer it online. You know that in China, or if you don't know, to make international transfers, you have to go to the branch physically, show your passport, show all your documents, and then do the transfer. So you're already outside. This is not going to be an easy way. So even if you're planning to move in a year or later, start setting this up. Don't wait until a few weeks before that, because either getting a bank account in your home country or international takes time. So that's one of the first things to make sure that you do it. Second of all, start finding a way how to get your tax proof of your Chinese income, because without this, you cannot do an international bank transfer in the normal way of going to the bank account and submitting all your tax reports. And it's getting easier than before. If you already set it up once in the tax bureau, then you can download the rest of the documents online. But I think for the first time, at least in Shanghai, because obviously every city is different, every province treats this tax information in a different way. But yeah, try to set that up, collect the documents. And also make sure that all your Chinese accounts, you have access to online banking that is working well, in case you are already out of China and it's very hard to move back here. So this is the same as what I mentioned of the Alipay and WeChat. Make sure that you can actually use the app, test it, that you can transfer money to a friend or something, in case you actually are locked out of China and you don't see yourself coming back. So at least you know that you can online transfer the money within China to someone else. And maybe this is not the ideal way to do it, but it may be that you may need to swap with someone for some cash. So these are the basic things to consider when you are planning to leave China, on how to repatriate in a relatively smooth way everything that you have.
On that point, Armando, I will emphasize that tax proof of China income is very important.
Yeah.
And you also need to talk. You have no idea how much people I've talked to. They say, yes, we have paid taxes and everything like that. But when they actually do the digging and go to the tax bureau in each city that they are, they found out that maybe the company they work with, they didn't pay the taxes and things like that. So please make sure that your company is paying the taxes, that you are paying the taxes, because that could be a great headache if you're trying to leave and then you find out that you haven't paid any taxes. Then that money is going to be even harder to move. So my advice is always check with your employer as well. Is my taxes on record? Is my taxes on not on the date? And also and ask your employer as well, how can I get access to these? Help me with these. I want a report of this every month, and so on, so on.
Yeah, actually, if there's already some comments that I was missing on the chat box related to this. Someone asking about how to get access to or how to do it online. So if you already did it once, I think Diego mentioned here in the comments, you should be able, as already Paras responded there, that as long as you already did it once and you have access to the IIT system, which is a individual income tax, directly from there, either from your computer or your phone, you can download it with all the tax records that you want. But yeah, the first step is to go, I think the first time you may need to go to the tax bureau, or also you may get some help from your HR. Someone also asked about how to get your online banking. This one, sometimes by default, when you open a debit card, they do it for you, but not always. Sometimes if you don't have access today, I think someone is asking about Bank of China, but it applies to any bank. You may need to actually go to the branch and ask them. Once there's no lockdown, I say, I want access to my bank online banking, just to make sure that that's working, because it's not always by default. Sometimes they don't set it up if you don't ask, which, yeah, I know it makes no sense, but it is like that. You have to ask for that.
Armando, do you want maybe, because I see a lot of questions coming in. maybe we can finish with the presentation on the other slides, and we kind of address all the questions at the end, so we have a little bit more time to do that.
Let's do that. Makes sense. We're gonna have, actually, we're pretty much at the end of the presentation, and that's for Seb, which is a bonus thing about repatriating money. So Seb, this is yours.
All right. So this one is like a bonus thing, and then we wanted to kind of mention that there is ways of doing this, right? There is ways of transferring or repatriating your money, so to speak. So the most common one is bank transfers. However, you need to understand that after the Chinese changed or updated the 2T taxes rule, they basically say that in order, you as an expat can take all your money back. They don't put you any cap. There is no $50,000 cap. There is nothing like that. You can take all your money back. The only condition that they put on that is that you need to pay taxes. So basically, they're saying, sure, you can take all the money that you earn here. However, depending on the money that you earn, you're gonna classify for a certain amount of money in taxes. So if you pay your taxes, then you have no problem, and we will transfer that money from a bank account to whatever bank account within your name outside of China. We will send it, no problem. It takes 1 day. The cost is maybe 200 RMBs. It's actually quite cheap. The exchange rate is not something significantly impact. The transfer is actually done in 1 day, which is not the ideal, but it's more the headache of gathering the documents, the tax proof, that the companies actually pay the taxes, and so on, so on, so on. But that is the most straightforward solution that we found, is just that you need to pay taxes. Simple as that. In terms of investments, we do have one way of doing it, that we actually have to link to a Chinese credit card that we as a company, the Beer, because we have such a long track record in China. We've been here more than 10 years, and we have a relationship with China Construction Bank, and we have access to a Chinese credit card. However, it's a Chinese credit card with a security deposit, which sounds kind of weird, but it behaves like a credit card, which means that it acts in all sense as a credit card. You can defer payments. If you don't pay your payment, they will collect your interest, and so on, so on. But we can get you access to that, and from there we can link that credit card to, for example, an education plan or a retirement savings or a life insurance that you can pay with that Chinese credit card using your renminbis, and that will go into a investment for retirement, for example, in US dollars, pounds, euros, or other currency that you want. So that is another way. It's just that it's just a more, I would say, more longer way of doing things, but you should do it anyway, because if you're thinking about investments, then actually you're killing two birds with one stone, basically, because you're at the same time taking some money out, and you're also investing some of your money for your future goals, either retirement, education, or whatever. And the other option, which is not the most convenient, I would say, it's the most convenient, but it's not the most, I don't want to cross here and say illegal, because it's not really illegal. You can give money to Armando, for example. I can give money to Armando and he can give it to me back and whatever, but it still creates a little bit more questions and more problems. For example, when you do a swap with somebody outside and then you give your home bank account, then somebody or third party sending you money to your bank back home might say, why are you receiving money if you're living in China? Who is this money from? You might face questions, basically. So it's not the ideal way. And unfortunately, to give you all some feedback on banking, global banks are moving in the direction that when you receive money from a third party, they're going to ask you questions, and they're going to tackle that even harder. And you can be maybe facing blocking of your accounts and things like that. So you don't want to deal with that. So swap is the last resource that we recommend. And like Armando said, if you were stuck outside of China and your money is all here, then there is no other option. You have to do a swap, then do it, of course. There is the option, but it's just be aware that you might be facing questions later on back home where that money came from. And with that, let's go to the questions, Armando, and let's see.
Actually, yeah, there's one last poll for this one. And yeah, so
Oh, yeah.
one all about this area. So we want to also learn what is the most the way that you use the most for repatriating your money right now. Obviously, we're not going to tell anyone. Don't worry. Is we just want to understand what's most people using right now. There's also crypto that we didn't mention, but yeah, just to we include it because that's also a way to do it. But yes, through investments, P2P swaps, bank transfers, or crypto. So as of today, what is the way that you use the most to take money out of China? And I will share also the overall results so people can understand what's happening or what our most expats, at least the ones who joined tonight, are doing. Also, we're very excited because tonight's webinar also got very popular, got a lot of interest. We got over 100 registrations, probably more than that. I didn't check 10 minutes before, but yeah, that means many people, well, they have a lot of time these days, but also are very interested in this topic. So that's very good. And thanks again for joining. So let's end the poll and share the results. And yeah, very similar as last week. Most people are using bank transfer, more than 55%. So that's good. That's the most straightforward, at least using the financial system. And then it's followed by swaps, which is very common. Our suggestion is, yeah, we're not gonna help you for doing that, but try not to use it.
I will mention on the pools, which is very interesting, kind of ironic, that you can actually do investments with your Chinese and actually be sending money out as well. So for all of you who haven't started in the investment lane, talk to us. We will give you a solid advice. We will give you an honest and transparent advice about how to do things smoothly, convenient, and how to make your life easier basically in China so you don't have to deal with things.
Yeah, definitely. So I think with that, we can actually move to the Q&A. I mean, there's already some comments and questions in the chat box, so we can start with that. And yeah, I mean, the important thing is like we say we are living like an expat, but the question is, are you actually banking like an expat as well? It's not just saying, oh, I'm eating food from different countries and traveling all the time, but also you should treat your finances the same way. So live like an expat and bank like an expat. So let's go.
Armando,
with,
do we do this? Do you bring people into to speak, or we'll just answer?
Well, first let's answer the question. But yeah, there's Jeffrey who is raising the hand. So if you wanna send your question in the chat box, or you wanna come and open your microphone and make a question as well, that's fine. You can just raise your hand and we allow you to talk. The person who raised their hand, Jeffrey, already you put it down. I don't know if you still want to talk or not. If you do, you can raise your hand again so we can allow you to talk. If not, it's also fine. So I think for now,
don't be shy. Join
it's
us.
okay. He put his hand down. So let's start with the ones in the chat box. And there was one from earlier from Jason Mora about, now my company is paying half of my salary as tax and the other part from a different account. Will I have a problem?
All right.
You go with that.
All right.
Taxes.
The short answer is yes. You're gonna have issues with that because you need to understand that whatever they're declaring from the company's account is what is going to go into the tax or labor bureau, basically. So basically, if you're receiving money from the company, let's say 10,000 renminbis, and that's the money to be declared, then that is the money that you're allowed to take out. If you're receiving money from another account, which is that's not linked to your company, then you're just receiving money. So that money that you're receiving on the other side is basically accounted as tax money. So when you're trying to take that money out, the first thing that they're going to tell you, they're going to put a cap. And the cap is according to your work contract and your salary. If you make 10,000 renminbis a month and you work for 1 year, then you can only take 120,000 renminbis out, or whatever you pay on taxes on those 10,000 renminbis. And that's how they protect if you pay taxes or not. So if you receive money from another source, then yeah, you're gonna have issues with that. You might not be able to take that money out, or you have to use some other resources like P2P or swaps and things like that are not ideal, but it's basically untaxed money.
Yeah, and actually, with what you said, you already pretty much answered a couple of questions that came later. One is from Angela about my employer did not file your taxes, so you've been doing swaps. So obviously, then you get the same problem as before from the other person. So this becomes an issue because technically you are not reporting any taxes, or technically through the bank system you cannot make a transfer out. So you may be you
Yeah.
need to do swap, but it can be a problem if you reach a big amount of money. If it's
Not,
a
not,
few
on, not only that,
$100s, yeah,
not only
go
that,
ahead.
let me jump in, mate. Not only that, it's also on the other side. So you're receiving monies from third party, and
Yeah,
they're just receiving money. And let's say you get $150,000 or more, then the bank on the other side is going to tell you, where is this money coming from? What is this? And whether you say, no, this is my work in China, then they will ask you, okay, show us your documentation that you pay taxes in China, show us your work permit in China, show us everything in China. So we can actually say that this money came from that. But the problem remains. They don't know how to clarify that money in terms of where they came from. So you might have an issue there. And then you're going into something called a red flag for a bank, and that's another headache you don't want to deal with. So my advice, when you're facing with employers like this, you need to be very firm. You need to be, look, I'm sorry, but I need to pay taxes because otherwise I cannot take my money out. And maybe come to a compromise in terms of like, how do we negotiate these? Maybe they can send some money out to a international bank account that you own, but it has to come from your employer.
yeah. Also, another of the questions is about Stephen Hoarvans. I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce it well. You're asking if we're a foreign investment company. We're not. We're a financial advisory firm, so it's not us who receive the money. So that's why we don't actually do the investment, because he's asking if we can provide RMB investments. So no, sadly, we
No.
don't, because as everything we mentioned, we try to do everything that is overseas. If you want to do only a RMB investment, you will just need to go to a Chinese bank and explain your situation. Also, another question is, what's the probability of an international bank account being turned down? It depends on your passport. Sadly, that has an impact. I don't know what passport you're holding, but this can influence. And with things that are going on, like globally, I mean, for now, Russian citizens are getting even harder situation to get international bank accounts. But yeah, many different countries may have some. It could be a little bit harder, not always impossible, but yeah, it depends sadly on your passport. I mean, Seb, you can also share a little bit from having a Colombian passport.
Yes. I mean, it's tough. It's not impossible. It depends on a lot of factors. Your work, the company you're working for, the experience you have been doing here in China, your work permit, things like that. Depends on a lot of factors. But yeah, sadly and unfortunately, the world still classifies passport as a way of classifying risk, which is insane. And we do not agree with that, but it's just the way it is. And unfortunately, there is no way for us to tell you, you have this amount of chances, you have this amount of chances. That there's just no way, because we're not the bank. So the only thing that we can do is to make sure that the process goes as smooth and as verifiable as possible, and so the bank has less reasons to reject just saying that because you're a Russian passport or Ukrainian passport or whatever passport, they have to give us a more elaborated answer why they rejected you. But in terms of probabilities, again, it's something that is completely up to the bank. And unfortunately, we don't have the way of saying you or guarantee you that bank account. So that's why we used to, or at least in my case, I used to do it for my clients, but now it's become such a headache in terms of paperwork and things like that, that it consumes a lot of our time. So that's why now the company has to tell us, oh, we have to a little bit charge for this, and this is how it is.
Yeah. Another question is how much money you can take out, which you already cover, is as much as you have paid taxes on. So as long as you have the proofs on that, then it could be $1 million if you have the proof of that you pay taxes on.
It can be. If you're a millionaire in China and you pay taxes on it, you can take it all. They will not put a stop on it. but you need to prove that you pay tax.
That you pay taxes on that as well. Another one, is it possible to open USD bank account in Singapore or another country online? There are international accounts that you can open without actually going to that location. You can do it sometimes online, sometimes remotely, like you maybe still need to send the paperwork by courier, but yes, there are possibilities that while living in China, having an international bank account, and we, TVR, can guide you with what are the best options based on your needs. So yes, that's a possibility. Any other questions that I'm missing, Seb? Do you also have it?
Yeah, there's someone here says, hi, are withdrawals in overseas ATM using a Union Pay card an option to repatriate part of the funds? Is there an annual limit? Yes, there is an annual limit. There is 100,000 RMBs that you can only move through ATMs a year. So basically, it's I think how much is that? 10,000, and there is a limit of withdrawal per month, if I'm correct, or per day. But yeah, that's one way, but it's very limited. If you have more than 100,000 RMBs, then you're a little bit stuck. And the other thing is that not everywhere in the world has Union Pay, or some places that have Union Pay doesn't work properly. So, I mean, you can use that for sure. It's another option, yes.
And it's more expensive as well. With every ATM, the exchange rates are usually more expensive, and also there's ATM fees. But yeah, that's a way if you are not planning to take out more than 100K RMB per year. And Stephen is following up, giving everything to the wife. Well, that's up to you.
One option.
That's a personal decision. But yeah, that will be all in Chinese, and it won't be under your name. And if something happens, it's not under your name, and that's it. All your money belongs to her. But yeah, that would be the
not
risk.
Advisable.
Question from Philip: if you don't know where your next destination is, but you know it's not your home country, which bank account will be best? Well, one thing is moving money to a bank account, and another thing is to invest. But yeah, probably an offshore location, like a third jurisdiction, would make sense. Whether that's savings or investments, yeah, I think it could be a best option, because it gives you more flexibility to have it in an international jurisdiction that later you can decide where to draw it back to your new destination.
We have another one here saying, once you leave China, how long do you have to repatriate your currency? I guess you're talking about how long will your bank account will be frozen, I guess. Probably, so that would depend on how much time have you left since you left, basically, when did you leave? And it would also depend on if you can actually move them. If you register on online banking in China, you can probably move it to somebody else and do a swap. I would recommend do that as soon as possible. And but of course, if you have a lot of the money here, then don't go over the limits. It's 50,000 RMBs, I think a day, if I'm correct. So don't go over those limits, because they will block your account and then it make you come to the bank and things like that. So just be aware of that. But yeah, once you're out of China and your money is here, it's gonna be tougher. It's gonna be definitely more hard to move the money. You have to find people that you trust, especially trust a lot, to give them the money and they can do a swap for you and things like that.
Yeah, and I think, so we don't run out of time. There's one more question, but at the same time, I wanna launch the last poll, which is about how do you wanna keep in touch with us? Because obviously we talk about different things, and there may be some other questions that you were either not able to answer or you didn't think of yet. But here, I don't know if it's already there. We give you the option. If you would like to speak to a DBA advisor, you can click on that. If you'll be added to the webinar WeChat group, where we are posting all the webinars that are coming, the recordings, all the information, we can also add you to that WeChat group if you're not there yet. Or if you also want to receive one of the guides that we made, which is investment options for expats, we can also send you that. Just click on the poll and we'll make sure that within the next days you will receive it on your inbox. So I'll leave the poll for a little bit more so people can just answer.
I'll answer one of the questions here. They say, Stephen says, you're a foreign investment company, right? Yes, we are. And you can provide renminbi investment, right? So directly renminbi investments, no, we cannot. And this has to do more with China policy. So we cannot, as a firm, invest directly into any Chinese funds or anything like that. But this is more because the Chinese government doesn't allow us to do that. So it has nothing to do with us. What we can do, however, and to answer Stephen's question about the foreign investment, is we can help you invest. Once your money is out of China, we can help you invest into Chinese companies. That for sure, we can do it. But we can give you exposure to China, and we can invest as a market as well. But directly invest the renminbis, that is a completely different story. It's a control currency. And the only way that you can do that is either to a bank or to a control or defined by the government investment company.
Yeah, and the last one is Barry asking if Devere can help open a international bank account. Yeah, that's a easy answer. Yes, we can. It can be a bank account, it can be an investment account, pretty much any international solution. Devere can either help directly or through our partners. So I think that's it. If you have any other questions, you can send it to our webinar email, the one that you received the link. And again, we want to thank you for logging in today. Tomorrow, as a reminder, we have the Chinese webinar investment. So they're going to talk on what are the impact of this lockdown for China, and also if you as an expat should be looking into the Chinese stocks. I hope this was useful for everyone. Once again, if you want to join the WeChat group, just either send an email to the webinar email, and we'll make sure that you get added to that. Yeah, any last comments or last words you want to share, Seb?
No, I mean, again, thanks everybody for joining. We are doing this to also help the community here in China. We're all going through a tough time right now. So including us, this is not an easy thing to do. And being at home stuck for a month is tough. Everybody's feeling it. But we think that it's also giving the community a little bit of kind of reassurance that if you have money here, then we can, and if you're planning to leave, then we can definitely help you out to navigate that as smoothly as possible, and yeah, without any much of problems, basically. So that's basically it. And again, thanks Armando as well. You're always great presenter, right? And talk to everyone soon.
Good night, everyone.